Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I have a bit of a new setup today, so please let me know down in the comments if there's any audio issues that you're getting. The noise dampening in this setup is not quite as good, I think, as it was in the last one. So I'm going to look into maybe getting a little foam to put behind this recording area. Hopefully that will clean up any issues. But if you hear things echoing really badly or something like that, in the meantime, I may try and try a couple of different things to cut down on that. Just let me know how things sound regardless. So today I wanted to get back to taking a look at some manga, and it's been a while since I've done one of these retrospectives. I think we finished with Alita at the beginning of April, and it's now the end of May. So hopefully you've enjoyed having a little time off from that. I have enjoyed looking at other things and, of course, working on other projects. But today I want to go back and look at Naoki Urosawa's Monster. And the first one of these big retrospectives that I did was for his 20th Century Boys, which I consider to be Urosawa's best series from a point of view of thematic resonance. Well, I'm not sure as much about that now that I've actually gone back and looked at it. It will be interesting to see where I stand on these two series after I finish this and reevaluate them as stories from a more mature perspective, both as a person and as a storyteller. Monster is a very, very strong psychological thriller that asks some really deep questions. And I love this series because, A, it's a little more concise than 20th Century Boys. It does not wander quite as much on its way to the resolution. And B, because I think the question it asks itself is very interesting. And in order to talk about that, I first have to make a note of something important about it, which is that there is a cultural concept that's never quite clearly articulated in this narrative, but I think helps understand many of the things that happen in this story. That concept is that a person who saves a life is responsible for that life. This is a very Japanese notion, and I don't know as it really has an equivalent in Western thought or philosophy. I want to talk a little bit about that and what I call the moral mosaic and Othello morality. These are concepts that I have articulated elsewhere on this channel, but I'm going to be bringing them up a lot as we talk about this series. So for the introduction today, I wanted to talk not just about the broad themes, but some of the interesting things I think this series offers in specifically the examination of what it means to live a moral life. And we'll dig deeper into that as we really begin breaking down the story. But for now, I guess let's start with the idea of what it means to save a life. Monster is the story about a neurosurgeon by the name of Kenzo Tenma. And his job, day in and day out, is to save lives. And there's an interesting tension between that and this particular piece of old Japanese morality. The idea here is that when you save something, when you save a person or an animal even, you are essentially becoming a new parent to that person or a new owner for that animal. That person has basically been reborn into the world through your intervention into their lives, or the animal has been given a new lease on life, and you are, to a certain extent, its owner, at least from a moral point of view, assuming that the original owner does not come and effectively buy it back from you by offering you a reward for keeping it alive. You can, in the case of animals, in some ways, absolve yourself of this responsibility. But the idea here is specifically as regards bringing someone or something into your community or back into your community that fate or circumstance had dictated should be leaving your community through death, obviously. The idea is that if you continue to keep that thing in your community, any consequences of that decision rebound on you, at least in part, as well as, of course, reflecting on the person or animal. So if a dog attacks and mauls someone's cow or goat, you then have to pay the price for that. not whoever owned the dog before, assuming someone did own the dog before. By the same token, if you save the life of a person, you have a responsibility to provide for that person. You can't just drag a person out of a canal where they were drowning and then leave them to starve on the side of the road. That essentially makes you a murderer because you intervened in a person's life to keep them from dying and you left them to die for whatever reason. And that is not considered kosher in Japanese society, at least as I understand it. I'm not going to claim to be a perfect interpreter of these principles here. But based on my reading and my research into this topic, this is basically the way it was looked at. It was cruel to save a life if you would then not intervene to assist that life to continue living. Very foreign concept, but it underpins a lot of what we're going to see happening here, because Tenma is going to come. He's going to run head into his responsibilities as a doctor raised in the Western tradition of saving lives and doing no harm, and at the same time as a Japanese person who is this responsibility to the lives he has saved. It's a very interesting concept. It's a very deep concept. I think it informed in no small part my evolving understanding of morality and storytelling. And to just recap that, I believe that the idea of black and white moral storytelling has merit to it. I believe there is such a thing as good actions and evil actions. But the idea that characters should be black and white, I'm less of a fan of that. It's true that a character painted entirely in shades of gray is almost impossible to make out. They're very muddy, they're very indistinct, they don't have any clear and solid lines to them. It's really not the way people tend to act. Rather, what you tend to see is a mosaic of black and white tiles, of black and white actions, of good and evil sharply contrasted. And it is that in those contrasts and where they come, where the tiles go from black to white, that really tells us a great deal about the character, about what they value, about how they assess the world around them, and where their blind spots to good and evil are. And it also speaks to the limited human understanding of morality. And that's what I refer to as the Othello nature of morality. If you've never played Othello, or Reverse Eye as it's sometimes known, it is a board game where you place tiles that have a black side and a white side on a grid. And as your tiles outflank colors, each player has one color. So a white player and a black player, and they place their tiles on that side, but they always place them to outflank their opponent's tiles so that their opponent's tiles are then flipped over. And this is one of the ways I try and understand moral actions in a story. A person may take a good action that is then twisted against them by further actions of other people in the story. And it is this, the decision to take good and evil actions and the ways that they can reverse each other in the world around you, I think that really shows the moral core of a story, that builds a mosaic and a pattern that helps us to understand and act morally in the world we live in. I think that's the real value of moral storytelling. Not so much to outline principles by which to live your life, or to concisely say that this is good and this is bad, but to illuminate the things that we think are good and are bad, and help us understand our shortcomings as moral arbiters, and the importance of seeing that clear line between good and evil, and parsing those as far as we can, even in our own limited understanding. And as I have reread Monster, I actually started doing a chapter by chapter analysis of this on this channel a while ago. More on that in a minute, but I did eventually complete the series, and as I did, I realized this has had a lot more influence on my understanding of how to write moral characters than I originally thought, which is why I wanted to come back and look at it again and actually finish it this time. Hopefully you all will appreciate looking at this and some of the themes and topics we discuss. I've decided to do this as I have done my previous retrospectives in what is essentially a volume at a time. This is the signature series version, so it has 16 chapters in it, essentially 2 volumes. And I'm going to go through 8 chapters at a time, 8 to 10, depending on which volume we're looking at. So we're gonna look at the first 8 from this in the next video. But I've chosen to do that because it kind of maintains the momentum of the story. Urosawa wrote this with these volume breaks in mind. So there's kind of a good chunk of story to discuss and analyze there without having to dodge around spoilers. Well, I mean, we're going to spoil everything, but without having to dodge around copyright too much, I can just discuss a page here and a page there and knit the themes together. When I was doing a chapter at a time, it was harder to dig as deeply into the themes and the broader pictures because they weren't always established in a single chapter. And I think that a chapter by chapter thing works better as a blind read, but this is my 4th or 5th time through the story at this point. And there's not as much speculation or discussion of what could happen, which seems to be the real meat and potatoes of discussion about a story you're going through stages. So that's why I've chosen to break it down this way. My next video will be on chapters 1 through 8, and this will probably be a weekly or bi-weekly thing, much like the previous retrospectives have been. So hopefully you'll come along with me for this ride. I think Monster is a really deep and really rewarding story to go through and look at all the different things that Urosawa does with the questions of morality and human nature and the tendency towards evil, and how we combat it by building in ourselves patterns of good behavior. All really great stuff. I look forward to sharing it with you. In the meantime, that's all I've got for you today. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. There's a like button and a subscribe button down there. You can use those as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.